Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome. And good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am a Lunar D8. Spiders. Within a crackling red, a suffocating black, my mind seemed to take form from countless ashes. A falling sensation jolted me awake, but my body would not move. A weight upon my legs, a haze upon my consciousness, as if the flow of blood had congealed within my veins. I opened my heavy eyelids and met Red. A girl wearing a red dress sat upon my lap, looking at me like one would look at a particularly droll statue in a dull museum. I meant to push her off me, yet I was unable to make more than the slightest twitch in the folly of the designed human flesh, unlike wooden marionettes. Despite the stiffness of my muscles and joints, I could still feel the hard seat and backrest. I tried to speak, and in more of the same. My voice did not move. She too did not speak. Finally her eyes, red as blood, met mine, as if acknowledging me, as if dismissing me. She stepped down to the ground. In doing so, she opened up my line of sight. I glanced around, still frozen. This was a place filled with shadows and little else. I seemed to spot the outline of a door by a far wall, which was also covered in darkness. Thus a glint of light where there was no light instantly caught my eye. A blade, a scalpel. The girl held a small surgical knife that, at this very moment, she let go of, that which fell to the ground, rather than clink or bounce, was devoured by the floor and melted away. A fanciful thought flitted across my mind that this was a dream. She did not speak. I could not speak. Go to the store page. The final prize is soup. You who are unqualified to drink Meng Po's soup. You have been chosen for the game of life, a horror yuri visual novel following a series of death games in the afterlife. Go back to library, click on the game. Let's look at the achievements. You've achieved bad ending number 1. You've achieved bad ending number 3. You've achieved bad ending number 2. You took a peek at what could have been, entered the side story. You achieved bad ending number 4. Congratulations, you received all endings. How is the underworld? 4 hidden achievements. My tongue stiff in my mouth, my limbs feeling not my own. Slowly I regained control of my body and pushed myself up to my feet. A wave of vertigo washed over me as I wobbled to balance. I glanced behind me, finding the chair I must have been sitting on in the same darkness that covered the rest of the place. Finished, I wearily looked back toward the girl. Where was this? Who was she? I tried to remember how I arrived at the situation. Nothing. I couldn't remember anything. Instead, feeling a budding headache at my temple and a sour sensation bubbling up in my gut. No one would search for me. A face crossed my mind as if to contradict me. Maybe that person who I pushed away would, but the thought didn't give me any sense of relief. You have already died. Then an unfamiliar voice, the voice of the girl wearing red, broke the silence. This is the afterlife, the courts of Dayu. Welcome to the final court, the 11th court, where you will be judged. I was dead, she said. This was the afterlife, she said. To think my forebears were right. Courts were a major part of the traditional subterranean afterlife Dayu, a concept formed a mixture of Buddhist ideals and traditional Chinese ideas. The number of commonly stated to be 10, but I heard of variants, albeit not 11. Then again, this wasn't my area of study, but rather information that person would mention now, and then, when something piqued her interest. Was I in the great shock that my mind would wander so? So I'm dead? Yes. She looked at me as if I were a fool. Without waiting, she continued her script. I am the judge of the 11th court of hell. You have been disqualified from entering the cycle of reincarnation by your sins in life. Your fate as a sinner will be determined by this court. Therefore, you may not drink Meng Po's forgetfulness soup. Meng Po was a goddess in a bridge in the underworld, serving a soup that would wipe memory of all that drank it. All souls had to drink the soup before they could reincarnate into the next life, stripped from the burdens of their previous life. Instead, you were given a chance to participate in a trial set by the king of the 11th court, a game of life. 3 rounds, 3 tests. Should you pass all 3, then you will be brought forth before the court to win the qualification for rebirth, or to undo your death. What did it mean to undo my death? I narrowed my eyes in contemplation, thinking of all of the false claims of resurrection made by religious fanatics of all sorts. Of course, I wanted to live again. Somewhere deep in my bones, I had already accepted that I was dead. What sort of tests? Dangerous enough? Difficult enough? What happens if I refuse to enter the game of life? You will be judged to have lost and be eaten alive. You have no obligation to participate, simply do nothing, and everything will end with time. No, just wanted to check. I have no intention of giving up before I even get started. I looked around again, finding no one but her and me. Why was I the only one chosen for this? Why do you think that? There are plenty of other dead who also play this game. Deciding whether you want to fight over the prize with them once you meet is your prerogative. A low bell rang. She tilted her head upwards, gazing into the dark. My task here is finished. I have been called away by the king, so I will take my leave now. Not looking for an answer from me, she turned to leave and stepped part way. To the shadows before pausing. She glanced back toward me and pointed at the door by the far wall. Just one more thing. Pass through that door to enter the first test. The first game. If you are still interested in playing. Then she walked fully into the shadows and disappeared from my sight. I was now all alone. All I had left to do was walk through the door, but I hesitated. The continuing, low sound of the bell sent chills down my spine. As I stalled, the darkness approached. Before I realized the chair behind me was swallowed whole, I stumbled, trying to avoid the shadow that had reached my feet. It extended toward me, and I backed away further, but despite the black barely touching my shoes, it felt as if hands upon my neck. Cold, yet burning. I gasped, forcing myself toward the door, tearing off the invisible things grabbing me. They seemed to try to drag me back, making my skin burn. I ran. I had to run. The darkness chased. I'd reached the door. I could not see the other side, despite it appearing more like a hole in the wall than a door, now that I was mere steps away. I had to go, propelling myself through, hands against the frame. I passed through the doorway. A strange light so similar to the absence of light enveloped me. Then I was falling. I grunted as I dropped unceremoniously to the ground. Despite landing on my feet, I slipped on the wet grass and rolled a couple meters down the hill. It took me a moment to reorient myself on the ground. When the world finally stopped spinning, I stood, brushed the dirt off my clothes as best I could, and observed my surroundings. There wasn't much to comment on. I was in a deserted part of a dark forest. Trees and shrubbery surrounded me on all sides. Visibility was minimal, but moonlight streamed through the gaps within the leaves. Suddenly a rustling sound broke through the natural quietude. Perhaps I wasn't alone after all. There was something in the foliage. Before I could investigate, a familiar voice filled the sky. Welcome to the first round of the game of life. It was the girl in the red dress. Like her voice came from the speakers of a stadium. She was nowhere to be seen, yet could be heard everywhere. The rules are simple. You have 9 hours to arrive at the bottom of the mountain. Alive, of course. I'll be your judge. Good luck. I bit back a chuckle. She couldn't hide the sarcasm in her well wishes if she tried. Well, at least downhill was already easier than uphill. I began walking in the direction the ground seemed to slope downward. I did my best to ignore the eerie feeling of something watching me from within the foliage. As I searched my pockets, did I have anything that might help me get down the mountain in one piece? Not much at all. No wallet, no phone, not even my lighter. At least the moon was bright tonight, despite the darkness of the forest of the mountain. I had enough light to ensure I wouldn't walk right into a tree. 9 hours wasn't a terribly long time, but it was enough to lose strength to thirst and hunger. Thankfully, I didn't feel hungry or thirsty right now, but just in case, I should spend some time looking for a river or... A sharp scream sliced through my thoughts and sent a shiver up my spine, making my heart race in my chest. I jumped to the sound, turning in every direction to identify its origin. Then as the scream began to diminish, the noise of crunching and squelching reminded me of a large dog feasting upon a fleshy reward. Reached my ears. I ran towards the source, It might have been dangerous, but I couldn't just leave someone in danger. So I naively thought. Dashing toward the noise, I felt my stomach turn as the animalistic eating increased in volume, and further dread came upon me as I realized that I could no longer hear the person. I skidded to a stop before a ridge, finding the level ground, stopped a few meters in front of me. The sound came from below. Walking toward the edge to peer downward, I wondered if they would be all right. The train of thought died as soon as I saw what became of the person, or what became of the remains of the person. They were dead. That wasn't a person. That wasn't a human being. That's just a pile of flesh. A few meters below the ridge where I stood, a pack of monsters hunched over something terribly red, tearing inwards from the lifeless sack of what must have been a human. Words were caught in my throat. My lungs stuttered with each breath. As much as my brain screamed at me to run, I couldn't tear my eyes from the scene. As soon as I thought that, one of the monsters suddenly turned its head. Red dots in the depths of black pits met my eyes. If those teeth caught me, I would be done. My sense of equilibrium collapsed and my legs turned to jelly, causing me to fall behind. It let out a howl and jumped toward me, thankfully unable to climb up the ridge to reach me. Yet, sensing my presence above the ledge just a few meters tall, it began to slam and scrape against the rocks to find a handle to climb upward. That was finally enough for my brain to get my legs to work. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I dashed through the forest in the opposite direction of those creatures, hoping I was still going downward, downhill and not into a den of monsters. As I ran past the trees and shrubs, a sudden light caught my eye. A bobbing orb within the foliage appeared to be approaching me, the light flickering in and out as it disappeared behind leaves intermittently. My breath hitched. No, no, no. I don't know what the light could be, but considering I just saw a pack of monsters, the last person that screamed, I don't want to find out. And picked another direction to run. How many more monsters can be? As I twisted, the ground beneath me disappeared. My foot hit something hard, and the sky swung outside my field of view as the grass and rocks came hurtling toward me. I crashed on the ground, just barely able to stop myself face planting straight into the dirt. Terror gripped my heart. Did something catch me? When I turned around, I saw only a metal pipe and a hiking backpack on the ground. What tripped me was nothing more than a pair of inanimate objects, innocuously scattered apart by the impact. Their presence was almost laughable in the face of what I had imagined. My heart wanted to relax, to stop thumping for a moment, filled with self-ridicule at my overreaction. Then I saw the light flickering through the trees again. Too close, I had to leave now. I struggled to my feet, but that one moment of relaxation took more of a toll on me than I expected. My legs wobbled, and the glow upon me before I could get up. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing myself for the end. I was done for. Whatever monster I was running away from was going to eat me. The first bite never came. Instead, I heard human footsteps shuffling closer to my position. Before stopping, the light swept over my closed eyelids and then shifted out of my face. Whoever stood before me did not speak. However, perhaps it wasn't a monster. When I opened my eyes, it was a pretty face that greeted me, but her usual gloomy disposition broken by the surprise in her eyes. It It was a familiar face, her eyes averting mine, as she too recognized me. Was I dreaming? Mimi? My heart started thumping for a different reason. Cold sweat breaking out from nervous awkwardness instead of fear. She was Mimi. No, not Mimi. Her name was Chang Yanaksu, and my former girlfriend. I used the term former not because I had died, but because we broke up a few weeks ago. And it wasn't... I swallowed those feelings like I swallowed her name from my lips. Lulu? Yes, Chang Yanaksu. We spoke each other's full names, mutually discarding the pet names that we once called each other when we had been in love. And Chang, we're no longer dating. Kanhala and Chang Yanaksu were dead. I finally gathered my thoughts. I didn't expect to see you here. Neither do I. You're here for the game of life as well. Rhetorical question, who would go hiking deep in the mountains at this hour of the night? Certainly not me, Cheng. She was so much more of an indoor girl. Yes. At least the task seems simple. We just have to get to the bottom of the mountain. It's always easier to go down than up. Like our relationship. Easy, there are monsters on our trail. Monsters? Yeah, I saw them eating one of our contestants. I didn't know how to best describe the scene. My blood running cold as I remembered vividly monsters eating. However, it seemed I didn't need to. She didn't doubt my words. She trembled as she looked at her phone and took everything not to reach out and give a comforting hug. This was a bad dream. We would wake up and we would be. I sighed internally. Why did I do this to myself? I couldn't let the past cloud over the present, still looking at the way she clutched her phone, trembling at the mere mention of monsters, made me waver in my convictions. It occurred to me that she would never make it out alive on her own. Alive, that seemed to be the wrong phrase. I can't believe we're both dead. That's one hell of a coincidence. Coincidence? A horrible one, but yeah. What was the line for interacting with and helping your ex? Despite my indecision, there was one thing I had no doubt about. It didn't matter that we broke up. I didn't want her to be dead. Shall we team up? Terror was still evident in her face, but there was a light of hope in her eyes for my words. She hesitantly reached out her hand toward me, but retracted it before I could hold her. With a slight shake of her head and a slight nod, she gave me the slightest smile. If you'll have me. We chatted about our situation for a few more minutes and debated on what we should do. We couldn't find an answer beyond playing this cruel game. Tilted her head toward the objects on the ground. What do we have here? I dug through the backpack I had tripped over. A couple bottles of water, a variety of snacks, and a first aid kit. I pulled the items out one by one to show Yanu. And I guessed this. I picked up a metal pipe laying on the ground backpack and swung it a couple times. It didn't harbor any optimism about its effectiveness against man-eating monsters. But it was a weapon. There's a note from 11. Lucky boxes will be scattered throughout the mountain for players to use as they please. I suppose is one 11? Oh, the girl in the red dress. She appeared to tell me I'm dead. Did she not appear before you too? I think it was her voice who announced the start of the game. I held my hand out with a note which Giannis handed me. The click of the red paper was stunning, taking me out of this dreary forest for a moment. Each delicate curve and stroke perfectly sized, indicating masterful control of the brush. I felt my lips curl upwards involuntarily, a softness filling my chest. There was a saying that beautiful people had beautiful handwriting. It was unfair. Oh, yes, she appeared in front of me, Verdu. She never gave me her name, so I've just been calling her 11 in my head. It'd be easier to call her 11. I briefly wondered what her real name was. As I repacked the backpack, I decided to ask the next time I saw her. She looked up from her phone and guiltily placed it in sleep mode. Have you tried calling for help? She chewed on her lip and shook her head before turning the phone again. There's no signal. Why'd she be using the phone for the whole time? That's too bad. Maybe we should turn that off. I can barely see our surroundings with that blue light. I'm sorry. Besides, if it runs out of battery at a time, we need it. That's not a problem. My mouth dropped open. The words cannot adequately describe my shock as I watched her fish through her pockets and pull out a hand-cranked charger. See, now I can use my phone as much as I want. Charging her phone like that would still take time. Let's leave it on sleep mode for now until we find somewhere safe and with reception. Oh, okay. She agreed and put her phone away without a fight. Backpack on my shoulder, metal pipe in my hand. Yansu following closely behind. We resumed our journey to the bottom of the mountain. We walked and walked and walked for a long time. I couldn't tell how long we had been walking. Was this even downward? What if a monster appeared beyond the next bush? Every rustle of foliage, every breeze of mountain air, every single little sound kept the two of us on edge, especially when the ground went up and down, the shadows moved with the moon. Despite my anxieties, I kept my face stoic. If I broke down now, I would never make it through this game alive. Not just me, but her too. Eventually 11's voice came once again from the sky. It is now the hour of the ox. You have 4 more hours to make it to the base of the mountain. 4 more hours meant we had little less than half the time left. I didn't know why the judge felt so kind to just let us know the time, but something else she said bothered her. Hour of the ox. It means the hours between 1 and 3 in the morning.